And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon. Today I am here with Peter Heller. Peter, thank you, sir, for taking just a few minutes to be with me and be my guest today.
You're so welcome, Michael. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. It's gonna be a really fun conversation because Peter, I love this. He helps nonprofits create a stream of infinite money. And I can't wait to get into this discussion because I've got a background in fundraising and support raising and all of that. And I know the challenges it presents. And I know, Peter, you and your team do a great job of taking that burden off of people and helping them create money to support their mission. So as we dive into this whole conversation, tell me, Peter, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Good question. And just because I've got it right here, I'm going to start by, can you see that?
I can, yeah.
So that's our logo. It's an infinity sign with money jumping out of it. And I do not have a suitcase filled with dollars anywhere here, but it's really, the concept that you can really raise transformative gifts for your nonprofit if you do things carefully and I don't want to say correctly, but using certain concepts. And we can talk about that in a few minutes. So I have been running the Heller Fundraising Group for 20 years now. Prior to that, I worked at large universities for about 15 years. So I've been in this field about 35 years, believe it or not. Okay. And the funny thing, to answer your question about how I got my start, is right now, I'm talking to you from Bar Harbor, Maine, which is an amazing, beautiful place. I feel really fortunate to live here. I just moved in to a temporary house my wife and I are going to be living in for a while. And the reason I mention that is that I got my start in fundraising at the place that I went to college, which is called College of the Atlantic. It's here in this small town. And a number of years after I graduated, a friend of mine was running their development office and he gave me a job. He actually lives right next door. So we've been friends now for like almost 40 years. So we both have consulting companies. And what happened was, I was like, oh, wait, fundraising, this is interesting. This is something I could potentially do. And I then left Bar Harbor after working there for a bit, went to work for University of California, Berkeley, and a bunch of other places. And then 10 years at Columbia University in New York, where I'm from. And then started working with what we like to call human scale or human-sized nonprofits on increasing their fundraising potential.
Okay, what is a human-sized nonprofit? I've never heard that before.
Well, I made it up. That's why you haven't heard it. So I'm going to, what I mean by that is Columbia University is a huge organization, world-known, Ivy League school, billions of dollars in endowment, very, very wealthy, doing amazing things in the world, really top-level education, research, doing other things. We tend to work with smaller nonprofits that are working in a wide variety of communities, whether it's a small town social service organization or environmental organizations or museums, arts, others. We've also worked with large organizations, but we like to, we have no problem working with multi-billion-dollar organizations. We just tend not to.
Right. No, I love that because it's those. My contention is the billion-dollar organizations. They have the people, they have the teams, they understand donor development and all that. It's those smaller to mid-sized nonprofits who have a passion. They're out making a difference, but they don't really probably have the skill set, the knowledge, the expertise of how do you raise money. And I mean, my wife and I go to a lot of, annual dinners for nonprofits and ministries and things. And that tends to be their thing because I think they go to all the conferences for nonprofits of their size, right? And this is what you do. And I think one of the things I like about you as I was reading and researching, going, you come at it kind of from a different mindset, a different belief system, let's say, of how can you engage with donors, leading with not I need your money, but leading with the passion, the purpose of the organization. The money's a a conduit of transaction once somebody's connected. Is that fair? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you just gave my sales pitch. So yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
I mean, we'll work with anybody because nonprofits of all sizes have similar challenges. Even if you're really highly staffed up, sometimes you need to analyze your staffing structure and whether people are really doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing or that are best for the organization. And we'll also work with startups. They're often harder to work with because they don't have systems in place, but we're
Yeah.
open to that. And yeah, that's all I want to say about that, dude.
Okay. No, that's
I think
cool.
there was a question in there that I maybe didn't get to.
Well, I don't know if there was. It was the mindset thing. Is because so many times. I mean, I was a missionary with Campus Crusade for a decade, right? And they have their way of raising money, and so I followed their way for a couple of years, and I went, yeah, that's not me. And so I'm a little bit of a rebel, and so I pivoted a little bit and became Michael and raised money. I mean, it was ethical and everything because it's Christian ministry, but it fit me better and it resonated with my donor base better. And I had a great solid base of support because I took what they taught me and went, yeah. But I think so many times small nonprofits, they don't understand this, oh, dare I say psychology, the mindset, the approach of raising funds.
Yeah, so I agree with you. This is why we get along so well. uh, uh, Not that we have to agree on everything.
That's right.
But I tend to take the view, which is a little bit, it's going to sound a little critical or nasty, that behind every nonprofit's fundraising operation, even the larger organizations that seem to be doing well, there's a bit of dysfunction or something that can be done better. And it tends to happen, actually, the larger the organization, the more you can hide dysfunction by, like, we're raising $100 million this year. Well, okay, are you doing everything you need to do? Could you be raising 200? So the things that make for a better fundraising operation are some of the things that you and I have talked about, like we talked about before this recording, is how do you tell a transformative, exciting story about how the future of your community is going to be stronger as a result of raising more money? And that's, I mean, I'm giving away like the secret sauce here, which is totally fine, because I want anybody who watches this, like, if you're at a nonprofit and you're able to go do that, amazing. If you need our help, we're also amazing. But the idea is that, well, there's a few things that happen. We tend to look at every nonprofit's most capable donors. So let me, in order to get where I want to go, I have to explain a couple things. So there's no nonprofit in history that gets the same amount of money from every donor, right? Like, nobody gets $25 from everybody. There's a big curve or a table involved there, and the more that you can maximize your gifts at the top of that chart or pyramid or whatever you want to call it, the more money you're going to raise and the more sustainable your fundraising operation is going to be. Now, as a kind of egalitarian kind of guy, I want to be really clear that does not mean that the people who can give you more money are more important as people. They're not. You need to treat everybody and every gift with care and gratitude. But we live in a world where money is going to allow your nonprofit to do things. And if you're not figuring out who the wealthiest members of your community, and generally, one mistake nonprofits often make before they really get into this is focusing solely on government support or foundation or corporate support, and I mean, when I say the wealthiest members of your community, they can be connected to foundations and companies, whatever, but I'm talking about individuals who have money, because that's just the way the world is. If you're not connecting with those people and inspiring them about the future of the community that you together can make even stronger, you're missing out on really important dollars. And so, one of the barriers, there's a whole lot of barriers to that people are getting started on this. One is like, we don't know anybody. The other is, I'm scared of asking them. So we help break all of that down so that nonprofit leaders, whether they're board members, staff, executive director, can have conversations with people who have the potential to support these organizations in a way that's going to transform the community. And you notice I'm not talking about transforming the organization. Yes, the organization can get transformed, but the most important thing is jumping over the organization and looking at the work you do in your community.
That's so good. That's so good, because I look at when we were raising support, and when Jill and I support ministries and organizations and things, I look at them, that entity, more as a conduit, a piece of PVC, right? I give my money, a little bit might go to administration and things. I get that, but I'm not supporting you. I'm supporting what you're doing to make an impact. Tell me that story, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'd be a great fundraiser. Sounds like you were.
I was, yeah. Thank you. But it's that, and so many times nonprofits are started with people who have a passion for that project, whether it's art, whether it's community involvement, dealing with handicapped kids, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And that's their passion. They're not good at asking people, because what I have found, and it may be different in different communities, but where I've lived, a lot of people who start nonprofits have not come from a money mindset.
Right.
We've not come from wealth. And so asking a millionaire to support me, could you give $10,000? Yeah, could you? No. Different, right? Man, talk a little bit about that and how you help nonprofits get past that, because that could open the floodgates, really. So,
two things. First of all, nobody starts a nonprofit going, oh, I hope I get to spend lots of time raising money, because they're starting it because they have a passion for the mission of that nonprofit, which is great. And sooner or later, it's going to be like, oh darn, I've got to figure out how to raise money and probably spend a good amount of my time doing that till we grow enough that we can have a fundraising office, and they're doing that. Although if you're the founder or the executive director and you're not involved, at least at some degree, in fundraising, you're not doing your job well.
Right.
So so we spend a lot of time with the nonprofits that we work with. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but we're located in New York City. We have about 25 people in on our team, including staff and consultants who lead projects. But so we work up and down the East Coast, but also more and more since COVID started around the country, a little bit internationally, but mostly. So when I say nonprofits, I'm talking about people who are, they could be almost anywhere. Yeah. So the organizations that we work with, we really help them break down the process of engaging potential donors in the future of their organization and really building a relationship that is ideally not going to be transactional. Like, hey, Michael, you live wherever, like in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm doing this thing for our community. And if I just come to you and ask you for a gift, you may make a, yeah, here's $250 for your thing. But if you have the capacity to give $250,000, that's not going to come from me just kind of like emailing you or calling you up. It's going to come from building a relationship where we both recognize that we share a passion for this particular aspect of the community or this particular aspect of being human, whatever it is. And so we help the people who want to have these conversations break it down, everything from like, how do you get organized to, I'm not going to just randomly start calling up. I got to put people on a list. I got to qualify them. I got to organize that. How do I get it? How do I schedule a meeting? You know, the hardest thing in the world, especially today's world, is like getting somebody to say, yeah, I'm going to spend half an hour with you or an hour with you. And then actually when you're in that meeting, what do you say?
That's right. Yeah. And it's very, I mean, you hit on a couple points there. I think a lot of times when people are running nonprofits and they're having to fundraise, I used to call it dialing for dollars, right? It's not the it's a joy from my side of the table now to be a giver. And so I'm not doing it for tax purposes. Those are nice benefits, but I would give anyway. I want to be involved in something bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of nonprofits I've found, as I just look across the board for the ones that we've been involved in, they miss the bar there. They tell a little story, but it's not that emotional story that gets me moving. Go, yeah, maybe we could do $1,000 every year instead of $250 once in a while.
Right.
But I need to be connected, and there needs to be more than a once a year banquet or, you know, a newsletter, an email newsletter once a month or something. How do you help them get that mindset? How do you work with organizations? Is it you come in for a month or a year, or I mean, what does that even look like to help them? Maybe, and that's number one. Number two is, do they need a development department, or can you function that way? And can you help them build a development department so that they can get this infinite money in-house? How does all that work?
Right. So just a caveat or whatever, we're not going to staff your fundraising. We're not going to actually do your fundraising for you.
Mhm.
We are strategists and advisors and handholders.
Love
So
it.
you don't need to have a full development office to raise significant money. We're going to meet, you know, every organization where they need to be met, and hopefully you can raise enough money that you can hire somebody to manage this process over time, because that's what's going to make it just continue. Just as you have a program director for X, Y, and Z, you need this person to be holding the bag and keep focusing on the process. And there are so many things that I can say about that. So I want to just like pick a few. I alluded to this before. The first thing is, geez, it's so important to, no matter who's doing this, to be really organized. Who are the people you're going to reach out to? You know, what you said, like, I'll just use you as an example. Like, just let's say that was a real world thing. You were giving somebody $250 and we're pretty sure you could go to $1,000 a year. I have to decide whether, now don't take this personally, but whether that's actually worth the time of the organization, or should they be focusing on people who could give $10,000? Because one of the things we do in that whole kind of getting organized phase is, first of all, we help put together the prospect and donor list. You know, how many people, let's just say for argument's sake, we're looking at raising major gifts for an organization from individual donors. How many people do they already know that they can put on that list? How many people do they need to like come up with new names through a variety of techniques? Once you have that list, and we usually say like $5,000 is the floor for having personal engagement, no matter the size of the organization. Once we have that list together, and this is really important because otherwise we're in like fantasy football world or something. How much time can well, first of all, who in the organization is going to do the outreach? Like, is it the executive director and a board member? Is it, you know, a fundraising staff person that you have? Is it a combination of those? How many meetings do you have the bandwidth to have in a month? And then when you know that, you can start to map out how long it's going to take you to reach out to the number of people on your list. Mm-hmm. And so you can begin to see, you can build some metrics, after which, like, once you get, it's kind of like the more sales part of the process. You got to get your self organized. But once you do that, you got to kind of turn off the sales hat and turn on the like relationship from the heart hat,
Right. Right.
where you want to start connecting with those people. It takes a lot of work for somebody to say, yes, I'm going to meet with you, just because, like I said before, we're busy. People, like, they kind of know what you're after. They think you're just going to ask them for money. And then you want to build relationships, and you want to build those relationships. This is really, really key. This is just like I said earlier, that many nonprofits don't get that concept of what's the future we're building for our community and how do we share that story. You want to build that relationship focused on listening to what your potential donor finds important and interesting. So that's a little counterintuitive, and it's a little tricky, which is why we stay in business, because we coach people on how to do this well. Is you, like, say you're having an hour meeting with somebody, it's the first time you've met with them. You need to both get your message across, but at the same time spend as much time as possible listening to what they think about your message, what's important to them about the in your community, however that community is defined. I mean, it could be like, could be a social service organization in a certain neighborhood, or it could be an environmental group, or some other kind of group that serves the entire country, and that's the community.
Right.
You can define community in a lot of different ways, but the more you can listen to what that person thinks, the more you're going to know whether there's a relationship to build over time. And we strongly advise, and this is a little bit like inside baseball kind of thing, but we strongly advise that if you're building that sort of relationship, you actually don't ask for money in that first meeting. Just like, hey, this is great. What do you think? What do you think of this? That's, great to know. It's been great to talk with you. I'm hoping I could come back and have another cup of coffee, or maybe sit in your office again in a couple months. I can update you on what's happened at our organization. And, maybe at that time we can start to discuss what your support might look like. So you want to build it over time, really.
Brilliant. Yeah. No, you approach fundraising a lot like I approach marketing, because in marketing, most people say, hey, Peter, can we have a conversation? Oh, by the way, I want to sell you something. And I take, no. Let's elongate the sale a little bit to build relationships and trust, and figure out what Peter really needs to know, do I even need that sales meeting? And how do I precondition you? And how do I get you to the point where you say no before I ever meet with you, because you're not a good prospect for me and I'm not a good client? How do we do all of that? I do that in marketing. You're doing that in fundraising, because you're putting the needs of that donor ahead of your own, in a sense, and realizing it's not, dare I say, this is heresy. It's not the money. I want the relationship with that donor more than I want their money today. Is that fair?
Yeah, and that's a really hard mindset to get into. Wow. And of course you want the money, so let's not pretend you don't. Right. But if you can just recognize that if you build the relationship well, like what's Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come, right?
Right.
If you build the relationship well, money is one thing that will likely happen.
Well, it's funny. It's almost infinite. So when I was raising support, we raised support for 10 years as missionaries. And I remember running a report one time through our CRM system and looking at somebody who had given like $50 a month for a long, long time. And you're like, okay, they're a $50 a month giver. I appreciate them. They're awesome. But I had some, $300 a month givers. I looked at that $50 a month giver over 10 years. Do you know how much money that is? Yeah. And you look at that and you go, wow, that was an infinite flow of money into our account so that we could do the ministry, because they bought in. And that was really a light bulb moment to me to go, it really is the relationship. Some of my best friends today are the people who joined our ministry.
That's amazing.
It is, but it's the relationship that drove everything. And if we came up to, hey, we need a new van or we need a whatever, we'd send out a letter. Guess who gave most often? Those who had the relationship with us.
All right. We're doing
and so that's where that concept, and I may be going off track here, of infinite money really comes in, is building the relationship that connects with that donor so that when they write that check, they feel involved in that, whatever that is, whatever you're doing,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Yep. And those are going to be the best gifts.
Yeah.
And I mean, money is money. But I'll tell you something. It's just kind of like an aside story, but it's kind of interesting in that way. Is that Columbia University, where I worked 10 years, they have students from all over the world. And after I'd been at my job about 7 years, well, first of all, the dean of the school that I worked with wanted to go to Asia to visit alumni in Asia. And I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years into the job. And I was like, you know what? Let's do that. But we're here in New York City. There's so much money and so many relationships that we haven't cultivated yet that are a subway ride away. Let's spend a bit more time doing that, because at the end of the day, they're all relationships and their money. So it's like, you think, oh, wow. Like, I mean, we went to Asia a bunch of times and it was exciting and we raised money there, but it was like, there's still relationships, and there's still, like, when you put the money in the bank, it's still the same amount of money.
Right. Yeah.
Or, I mean, it's still dollars.
It is. But it all comes back to the relationship, the constant communication, and the vision of what impact are we having on the community? What impact are you, Peter, having on the community as part of what we're doing? You're part of this building campaign. You're part of this art gallery. You're part of this, whatever it is. And your gifts make a massive difference, right?
Yeah. And the other thing, Michael, is that what we haven't said yet is that the relationship is important, because it's like, we want to make sure that you're not just like using people for their money, and you're actually like all like, your shoulders are all pushing in the same direction. And money is just one of many things that both parties can get out of the relationship. Sometimes that person will become a board member. Sometimes they'll volunteer for X, Y, or Z. Sometimes, they're a real estate attorney, and you're building a thing, and you can ask their advice on that, or they own a construction company, or they're whatever, they have a flower store and you need flowers for, who knows. So you just never know what can come out of a relationship if you build it.
When you build it with the idea of relationship first, then decide what's important to that donor, you can then decide together what's the best way. I love the flower thing. I mean, what if a nonprofit had a flower shop and the guy said, you know what, if you need flowers sent anywhere, just let me know. I'm happy. That's one way I can contribute. It's not a monetary donation, but it sure can add up and make a massive impact to somebody who just gave some money. Send them flowers. It's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I mean, there's all kinds. I love how you just open that up, because so many times we think fundraising, money, gotta ask. Well, yes, but it's 1,000 other things too that you've learned over a couple of years of doing this. What'd you say?
Yeah,
35
years. And yeah, we used to send out a lot of flowers to our donors also.
Yeah.
Flowers and chocolates.
Chocolates. I love chocolates. Yeah. So it's understanding your donors, because the other thing that I learned a long time ago in business and in life and in fundraising is birds of a feather flock together. And when you find those donors who are passionate about what you do, they have circles of friends who are still passionate about what they do. If they go to the arts, they go to the art studio with other people.
Right.
And so there's a built-in kind of referral network, an opening to be able to tap into more like-minded donors.
Absolutely. I always think it's funny when somebody who's a board member at a nonprofit, they'll be like, well, who would be interested in like giving to this or joining the board? And I'm like, well, you did it. What makes you think nobody else is going to want to?
That's right.
I don't want to ask my friends. Well, like, you're here because you're passionate about this. Why, what's holding you back?
Well, and I think at the end of the day, we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And sometimes we just don't know where to go. We haven't been asked. And I think that's one of the scariest things in the world.
There's something really interesting about that. So we've worked with a lot of organizations. There's one I'm thinking of that was in Manhattan, in New York City, in East Harlem, in a kind of, you know, really economically challenged neighborhood for the families that were living there. And really amazing organization. And the board members were really committed. And just like with so many other organizations, but there was something about that particular client engagement where it kind of opened my mind up to, like, there's nothing like super special about this organization besides the fact that it was amazingly well run, and it's still to this day, it's a great organization. I mean, it is special, but the board members were there simply because somebody reached out and said, hey, can you come to East Harlem, take a look at this organization and get involved? And, you know, somebody could have called them and asked them to go look at something else. So it's you know, it's those kind of connections that make a difference all the time.
Yeah, it does. And all of that really boils down, when you think about fundraising and all of that, to strategy. And I think that's why I love what you do, is helping nonprofits really think at a higher level to go, what are you trying to accomplish? And let's have discussions around that. And now, how do we best guide you in making that happen long term through donor relations and fundraising? And
Yeah, absolutely.
again, that's a mindset, right, that not everybody has, and that's why you've been so successful. That's why you've been doing it for 35 years, which is awesome, because not many people stay in that field for that long.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing is, you've probably seen it all. So when you come in and work with an organization, you have this library of resources. You can say, oh yeah, I've seen this in Harlem. Here's what they did. It might work for you. We might make a few tweaks, but here's the concept. Let's see if that fits. And it's a strategy level. And if anybody, I mean, everybody who listens to my podcast, Peter, knows I'm a strategist when it comes to marketing, right? And so it's strategy, and then it's execution. But if you start executing first and trying to raise money to get that, you know, $1 million or whatever it is, and you don't have the right strategy, you're going to leave money on the table. You're going to hit some barriers. And I know that you work with organizations. I mean, we could be here all day. You obviously hit one of my hot buttons that I love to talk about. How does somebody reach out to you or your organization to learn more about you, who you work with? How would they even start that process? Where would they go?
Great question. So HellerFundraisingGroup.com is our website. My email address is peter@HellerFundraisingGroup.com. Myself and my team are happy to talk with anybody, and we can, you know, pretty quickly through conversation figure out if you know, you're in a kind of the right place to work with us, or if not, we can suggest other resources. We do a lot of work, not exclusively, but a lot of work with capital campaigns, meaning that when an organization needs to build a building, buy a piece of property, renovate a building, build their endowment, or raise extra money for programming that's kind of outside of normal things, that they usually put that inside of a capital campaign. So we're experts at developing those. And we also work on major donor programs, which is a lot of what I was describing, which, big secret, that's kind of what happens inside of a campaign anyway. And then we do a lot of assessment of fundraising functions and training also on how to do fundraising well. So happy to talk to anybody and help figure out whether kind of where you're at and what your next step is.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to grab all of that and make sure that's in the show notes. HellerFundraisingGroup.com is the website. You can go there, go to the show notes, and you can find everything that we just talked about, because I want this to be simple. As most of my audience are, you know, business owners, nonprofits and things, and they're listening, they're working, they're out raising money, dialing for dollars. But I want them to find all of this in the show notes, to reach out and have a conversation with Peter or one of his associates, and just here's the situation I'm in. Here's what we're thinking about. Are we a good fit? Does this match? What would you recommend? And through probably, I'm guessing, one call with Peter's experience, he's going to be able to direct you in the right direction, or say, yeah, maybe we should have another conversation.
Yeah, and we also, Michael, we have a good number of videos on our website. If you go in the top bar, there's a free tools thing, and in drop down it says videos. A lot of them feature me because, well, I like talking, and you can get a lot of good information about, like, how to set yourself up for fundraising through some of those videos. And they're all
Beautiful. I love
including our fundraising in 12 minutes, which is, I think I told you, 170,000 YouTube views,
Yeah.
which makes it one of the top ones. And anytime you search for it, which is kind of fun.
I love it. Yeah. And having a library there of resources is it's a great model even for nonprofits, I think. I teach my clients to do the same type of thing, that when somebody hits my website, they're searching, they're looking for information. Oh, here's some videos. The longer somebody spends with you, Peter, the more they're going to like you and trust you, and the more likely they're going to engage with you. So thanks for being such a great marketer. I don't know if you set out to do that or not, but you are. But thanks for what you're doing to help nonprofits really make a larger impact in their communities, in the world, by bringing donors to the table. And I love the concept of creating streams of infinite money to make an impact. So Peter, thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being my guest on Expert Speak. This has been lots of fun.
Super. Yeah, for me as well.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Experts Speak. Tune in again next week when we'll have another phenomenal guest. Until then, take care. God bless.